Executive Director of the Kansas Lottery today. I would hope that you would have a lot of questions of the Director. As many of you know, we have a sports book bill in our committee, which we will probably hear in the near future. The Senate has one also, which is a little different than ours. They're having hearings this week. With that, look for approval on the minutes on January 12th, 13th, and 14th. Without objection, they will be approved. Seeing no objections, they are approved. Bill introductions. Before I start that, I need to go to the IT guy and tell me who's on the web.
I got Jordan Mahallahan, Matt Sterling, John Epley, Louis Ruiz, Mike Hoser, Michelle Segan, Samantha Potter, Stephen Durrell, Steve Howe, Trevor Jacobs.
Thank you. Connie, you've got that? Okay. With that, I will look to bill introductions. Eric Smith, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce a bill on behalf of a number of associations, including the FOP, firefighters, EMS, and law enforcement, Act concerning workers' compensation and PTSD. The RS number is 21 RS 0092.
0092, would that be correct? Matt, you have that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair also has a House concurrent resolution. Matt, do you have that RS number?
Yes, it is RS 21 RS 1143.
21. Give me that last part.
21 RS 1143.
Thank you. That has to do with a resolution that Representative Stephen Johnson has asked to introduce. It has to do with a resolution that he calls it Keep Them 9, I believe is what it is. It's referenced to the United States Supreme Court. It's just a House concurrent resolution. With that, without objection, that is admitted. Other bill introductions. Matt, do I have anything else? I don't think so, but
I don't believe so, sir.
thank you. Then I'll ask for bill introductions from the audience. Bill introduction. Good morning. If you'll state your name and your bill. You need to put the microphone on.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Philip Cosby, American Family Action, affiliate of American Family Radio. I have a RS number 0873 concerning sexually oriented businesses, reasonable and constitutional restrictions due to negative effects on the community having to deal with pornography outlets and strip clubs.
Thank you. Matt, do you have that RS number?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Without objection? It's accepted. Further bill introduction. Seeing no other bill introductions are closed. Our informal briefing is for Stephen Durrell, the Executive Director of the Kansas Lottery. Stephen, are you on WebEx?
I am here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Then you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to see all of you again this year. Some old faces and some new faces. We have provided testimony for you with regard to a number of things that are going on at the lottery. I won't bother you or bore you with just reading through the testimony, but I will sort of go through and give you the highlights. It's been an interesting year for the lottery, as you can imagine, some ups and some downs based on the where we are as a nation and as a world. Let's go through starting with traditional lottery sales for fiscal year 2020 totaled $275 almost $1 million as compared to $295 million in fiscal year 2019. Some of you will remember fiscal year 2019 represented the the highest lottery transfer ever, and that was due to, in fact, some large, very large national jackpots at Mega Millions and Powerball in October of 2018 and March of 2019. When those were down in fiscal year 2020, then our revenues were obviously down and reflected as a part of that. Those are jackpot. Our draw games are obviously mostly jackpot driven, and so when those games are not as high, then our sales are different than they were when they're very high. As you can imagine, over the last month, you probably heard that there were some very high jackpots in Mega Millions and Powerball. Mega Millions jumped to over $1 billion, and that, of course, naturally affected our sales in a positive direction. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Excuse me. For instant tickets sales are scratch tickets, which is something that we have a little bit more control over. Sales in fiscal year 2020 were almost 86 million, compared to 165 million in fiscal year 2020, or fiscal year 2019, excuse me, which is an increase of about 12.3%. Veterans benefit games got about $1.83 million out of that total. One of the reasons some of those numbers were increased were that we have spent a very concentrated effort making sure that we could increase our our instant games as most effectively as we could by selecting the tickets that we thought our players would be most interested in playing. Also, then making sure that our retailers had all the proper signage and dispensers and larger on-counter displays and that sort of thing. And that really has made a difference in increasing our sales with regard to our instant tickets. And our staff deserves a lot of credit for really taking the bull by the horns and getting out there and making those sales go up. Total combined draw sales for fiscal year 2019 were 1.297 million as compared to 89 million in fiscal year 2020. That's obviously a decrease, as we just talked about, as a result of lower jackpots. However, through the first 7 months of fiscal year 2021, sales have totaled about $187 million. That was coupled with obviously the rise in Powerball and Mega Millions games over the last couple of months. That's been terrific. And then our strong performance in instant ticket sales continues, and we're up about 20% over this time where we were last year. Just as a note, we should mention that in fiscal year 2020, the lottery paid out more than $166 million in lottery prizes to players, and the commissions were over $16 million. Let's talk about vending machines a little bit. As you recall, those of you who've been with the committee for a while, we've gone through several iterations of making sure that vending machines were out and ordered. Fiscal year 2020 was the year that we were finally able to begin implementation in its full form. We have about 200 vending machines out across the state currently. In fiscal year 2020, the machines generated more than $6.4 million sales, which resulted in a transfer of about $1.7 million to mental health programs, which, as you will recall, are a beneficiary of machine sales. I should note that through the first 7 months of fiscal year 2021, the machines have totaled more than $9.8 million. So we're already up over where we were fiscal year 2020, considerably in this fiscal year, with $2.6 million in transfers going to mental health programs. There's a lot of reasons for that. People become more and more aware of the machines, and the popularity of those machines continues to grow. Their sales continue to become more and more a staple of what it is that we do at the lottery. I should note that in our budget request this year, for fiscal year 21 and 22, we have requested that we be able to purchase more machines because we have a lot of retailers that are asking us for machines. So we obviously have to budget for the purchase of those machines to get them out into the retail locations. Transfers. As a result of sales in fiscal year 2020, the State Gaming Revenues Fund and the Veterans Mental Health Programs, our transfers to those totaled about $69 million. As I mentioned previously, $1.26 million of that was going to benefit veterans and military programs. That brings the total to about $20 million that the lottery has transferred to veterans and military programs since that was specifically passed by the legislature in 2003. I should also mention that in addition to just the regular prizes and the money that the lottery earns through sales, the state of Kansas collected almost $700,000 in state income taxes through prizes paid, and also the lottery collected over $192,000 and through the debt set-off program of people who won prizes but owed money to the state. So that's a good thing. Want to mention our Play On program, which became our Second Chance Player Loyalty Club program in 2017. That's been a very successful program for us over the last 4 years. We have actually that number is wrong. Over 200 instead of 283,000 members, we have over 300,000 members now, partially as a result of the Mega Millions runs over the last several months. Those players have scanned more than 46 million tickets into the Players Club program, and when you scan a winning or non-winning ticket into the program, you earn points. And those points then can be used for entering other contests for prizes or trips when we were giving away trips, things of that nature. And it's been a very successful and popular program for us. In March of last year, about a year ago, about the time that all the fun hit for everyone, we implemented a feature on our Play On program that our players had been requesting for a very long time, and that was the ability to check on their mobile application whether a ticket was a winner, and it was the ticket checker function, and that went into effect in March of last year, and that's been very effective and very popular, and we've had over 11.5 million tickets checked through the Play On app since that time, since that program went into effect. Just moving on to other programs and other features, wanted to let you know that our Holiday Millionaire Raffle sold out again this year. 150,000 tickets. We announced the winning ticket number on January 5th at noon on live television across the state. I should, however, mention that winning $1 million ticket has not come forward yet. So there is a $1 million winner out there somewhere floating around that has not made their claim yet. So that does happen. We do have people that, with the raffle, it's been an interesting over the last number of years. Some people claim immediately, some people take a while. We're not worried about it yet, but we definitely want people to know that winning ticket is out there and they need to be aware and check their tickets. We've also offered just a number of variety of different program or tickets and different partnerships across the state. We launched 44 instant scratch tickets during fiscal year 2020. We have sports partnerships with the Chiefs, the Heartland Nationals, NHRA, NASCAR at the Speedway. We also do relationships with just more local state events. For example, the county fair, or sorry, the state, the state fair in Hutch, and also Country Stampede and Riverfest in Wichita. One of our interesting special projects that we got into this last year was we introduced our first collegiate ticket, which is our Rivalry Riches ticket, which have featured both KU and K-State on the front, their mascots on the front of the ticket. It was a very popular ticket, still continues to be. I think it would have been even more popular if we'd been able to do some of the things with it that we'd originally anticipated. We were going to send players to away games and just have real sort of event-driven prizes, second chance prizes as a result of that ticket, and we just haven't been able, obviously, to do that under the current environment. But as we do ticket and program in the future, we're fairly confident that it will continue to grow as a really popular thing for our universities, and it's been great. It's been a fun ticket, and our players have enjoyed it. For fiscal year 2021, so far, fiscal year 2021, instant game category continues to perform well, with us outpacing our fiscal year 2020 sales, with nearly 120.7 million across the first 7 months. Total draw game sales in the first 7 months are 66.3 million. Across all games year to date, total sales are about 187 million, which is about 31 million more than this time during fiscal year 2020. And during the first 7 months of fiscal year 2021, the state has transferred about $38 million roughly to the state. Just as a recap, since the lottery's been in existence, we've had a net sales of more than 6.5 billion. Nearly 3.6 billion has been won by players. We've created approximately 100 millionaires in that amount of time. More than $370 million has been paid to lottery retailers, and more than $1.9 billion in transfers to the state. Moving on to expanded gaming, our friends in our partners in the casino business. It's been a very interesting year for our casino friends, and Obviously, as a result of that, our relationship with them and our partnership with them, as you will recall, about March 17th of last year through May 22nd of 2020, the casinos, roughly, they didn't all reopen at the same time, but the casinos were closed. They were basically blacked out for that 2-month period. So that's because we didn't know exactly where we were, what we needed to do to reopen in a safe environment. And during that time, expanded gaming revenues decreased by nearly $77 million, or roughly about 18.7% below fiscal year 2019 numbers. It's been, the casinos have reopened now, obviously, and have been open since roughly May of last year. We'll go through where they all are kind of standing in here in a moment. But I do want to just sort of give them a shout out before we get into the specific numbers. It's been a very difficult time for a lot of different businesses, and obviously our casinos are a part of that. But I have to give them kudos for really embracing, and I'll tell all of you who've heard me address other committees this year, I will say the same thing. They deserve a lot of credit for going out of their way to try to maintain the health and safety of their patrons and their employees. They have really tried to follow the rules of both KDHE and specifically, more importantly, the rules of the local governments under which they operate. They have been exemplary in trying to prevent that. And even though they have had people who they have had to quarantine who are employees, and I've also had employees out who unfortunately have tested positive and become ill with the virus, it doesn't, knock on wood, appear that any of those people were infected in the workplace. They were all infected externally, and they've been able to control that. And I should also mention that a number of these folks, even during the casinos, during the time period that they were closed, kept a lot of their employees on the payroll. They did not lay them off. They tried to keep them paid and working to the extent that they could. And so they deserve a lot of credit for trying to protect people in their particular zones and their employees and their patrons. We meet with them on a weekly basis now to sort of discuss where things are, where they're moving, and sort of their COVID numbers, and also any issues that they might need help addressing. And it's been a very interesting experience, and we've worked hard to try to maintain that safety. For the state of Kansas, for fiscal 2020, transfers from the casinos was about $73.6 million. Cumulatively through fiscal year 2020, since the casinos opened, it's about $709 million. Problem Gaming and Addictions Fund got $6.7 million through fiscal year 2020. Cumulatively, about $65 million. City and county governments got about $10 million through fiscal year 2020. And that's about $96 million that they've received overall since the casinos have been open. Moving on, let's talk about the individual gaming zones. Let's talk about Cherokee County first, or Crawford and Cherokee counties, which is our southeast gaming zone, which is our Kansas Crossing Casino, located near Pittsburgh, Kansas, in Crawford County. They opened with about 575 slot machines, 16 table games, and currently, because of COVID restrictions, the distancing limitations, whatever other limitations that they have by county and local officials and initiative, they're at 346 slot machines, and the player table game positions are variable depending on the game and the time that they're available. Their total gaming facility revenues were about $28.6 million in fiscal 2020. Moving on to Sumner and Sedgwick counties, which is our South Central gaming zone. Kansas Star, they started with 1,650 slot machines and 62 table games, including a 10-table dedicated poker room. They currently have about 900 slot machines active with about 44 reduced capacity table games, and all the poker tables are closed just because of the proximity issues and the safety for patrons and employees in a poker room environment. Their total gaming revenues for fiscal year 2020 was about $150.4 million. Moving on to the Northeast Gaming Zone, which is Wyandotte County and our Hollywood Casino. They started with about 2,000 slot machines and over 50 table games, including a 12-table dedicated poker room. During the pandemic, those numbers have been reduced significantly to about 1,200 slot machines, 20 restricted capacity table games, and currently no poker tables. Gaming facility revenues for the Hollywood Casino in fiscal year 2020 totaled about $122 million. And finally, we moved to our older casino, the Boot Hill Casino, which was out in our Western Gaming Zone. They operated only 650 slot machines with 21 table games and 2 poker tables. Currently, they have about 415 slot machines, 16 reduced capacity table games, and no poker tables. Their gaming facility revenues for fiscal year 2020 were about $33 million. So with that, that's just a basic summation about what's going on with us over at the lottery. I don't know if any of you have any questions that I might be able to answer about that or anything else that are going on. Be happy to try or get you the answers if you need them. But that's an overall summation, and that's where we are. So thank you for your invitation to be here.
Chair. Stephen, great to see you in the past 24 hours. Again, like we just were in general government budget together yesterday. My question is, yesterday in your budget, we were discussing that how the governor cut 5 FTEs from your 2020 budget.
Yes.
But if sports wagering happens, you're going to either, are those vacant, or, I mean, I know you're going to need them because if sports wagering happens, it's going to significantly affect your agency. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things that most of the when sports wagering and iLottery come up as a topic of discussion, it's one of those things where we don't want to sort of pre-plan where we're going to end up just because we don't know the system or the structure that we might operate. So typically what are in the bills that we've seen are sort of additional permission essentially for the ability to add additional employees or staff as needed as we go through the process. We don't want to overstaff. But we don't certainly want to understaff in that situation either. And generally, those bills have allowed us to sort of, as we get into the process and see where we need to go, if we were to get beyond the scope of where we are currently budget allowance for staff positions, we would have the ability to expand. So.
Thank you. And I just have a real quick follow-up, just informational for the committee. With the sports wagering bill, since you are an agency, you cannot lobby one way or another, correct? You have to come in neutral?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Durrell. If you could, we do have new members, and while you may be tired of answering this question, I think it would be helpful. You talked about dedicated monies to mental health that are coming from the vending machines that we put in legislation. First of all, if you could describe what you know about specific mental health programs that may be addressing, and then the overall urban legend of the dedicated monies to schools by the lottery. Thank you.
Well, I won't get into where the money goes for mental health resources because that's really not my bailiwick, and I don't want to sort of misstate for the committee where I think that money is going. We think it's obviously, we do have dedicated monies in the lottery that go to, as we mentioned before, military and veterans programs, as well as now mental health. I'm sure staff or the folks that administer those programs can get you a very accurate dissemination of those funds. I'd hate to sort of guess where those monies go, but I know they go to worthy causes to make sure that those needs are cared for. So I will defer that answer to staff. With regard to education, yeah, that's been a long-standing discussion point about where the money goes for lottery. Somewhere along the way, the idea was out there that money from the lottery was originally designed to be for education. That never was the case. From the very beginning, lottery monies were statutorily designed to go where they basically go now. I do think that we obviously have other states. Missouri is our neighbor, that they're a very big, a lot of their monies go to education by design and statute. And they have done a very good job over the last, almost 2 decades of trying to remind people that lottery monies go to education And I think that some of that has rubbed off on our state, and I think that the perception is that those things are similar, that our monies are dedicated to go to education. Now, I will say, obviously, some of our monies go to State and Gaming and Revenues Fund, and then some of our monies end up going to the State General Fund. And of course, as we all know, a good percentage of the State General Fund, those monies go to education. So we are indirectly having money go to education, but it's not the direct, all lottery monies go to education. That I think is sort of an old wives' tale that was floating around out there for a very long time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just let us know if you have the information handy, like the payback ratios for your various programs, and let us know whether those have changed significantly over the last few years?
For which programs?
The scratch off tickets, the other lottery.
Oh no, they still remain the same. I can get you the exact payouts. If you want those numbers, but they have not changed over the last several years. We have not. We still have a statutory percentage that we have to give back, and we meet that every year. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Darrell, just a couple questions, sir. The Kansas lottery, 275 million. You went through the number 69.1 to state, 166.5 to players, 16.2 to retailers. The remaining, if my math is correct, $23 million. Is that for overhead staff? Do you have a breakdown of where that money goes?
Sure. I mean, we obviously in our budget every year we have a breakdown of how that money is broken out. We have a number of different places where that money goes. Obviously, the biggest percentage goes to staff and salaries, but sure, we can get you that breakdown.
We have one more, Mr. Chairman, thanks. And then could we also get a breakdown, it might be in the statute, but the 69.1 million to the state, a lot of that's kind of earmarked or I think pre-spent almost. Can we get that breakdown as well?
Sure. And I think that probably, I'm pretty sure that your staff has a lot of that on hand, but we can get you breakdowns for sure. Writing it down to make sure that we don't forget.
Any further?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr.
Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durrell, I'm curious from just a marketing standpoint, that what % of your lottery and expanded lottery earnings come from persons from different socioeconomic levels, like persons in near poverty, like 200% of the federal poverty level or below? Do you have a breakdown at all? Do you guys track that information?
We do not, and it's one of those things that it depends on who you ask where that number falls, to be honest. There are any number of studies that show, that, the old, again, wise tale that the lottery is somehow preying on people of a lower socioeconomic class. There have been a lot of studies to show that that isn't the case, that a lot of people play the lottery just based on percentages. No matter their social economic income, there's sort of a percentage of people that like to play just because they like to play. And then also there is a issue there. And so there's a number of different reasons, there's a number of different things that you can do to try and track that. For example, one study tried to show that socioeconomic class could be traced by the number of people who were buying tickets, by where they were buying ticket locations. And obviously they were trying to show that in, for example, places, lottery retailers where tickets were being bought were higher in percentages where the socioeconomic of the surrounding neighborhood was lower. But, the problem is, as one person I heard say, you don't have a lot of gas stations in Beverly Hills, and the reasons for that are that the land costs are too high. So you're going to skew the numbers for what your socioeconomic class you think are being bought, based on the fact that, you know, convenience stores are on lower priced land, and those are that tend to be in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods. But no, we don't track that, and I don't believe that at least I haven't seen anything from the casinos lately that have done that.
Yes.
If I could do one other follow-up on this demographic question. I know you work with, or you have your problem gamblers fund and such. I'm wondering a little more about problematic gamblers, as far as if you would have the people, you know, your top 10% of your customers, what percent of your total revenue is generated by 10% of your customers? I mean, do you have that information?
We do not track that. We can look into it. I know that you had a question yesterday in the budget hearing and with regard to the casinos, but we can see if we can find something that might answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following up on the question about the mental health program services, is that what is in statute on the Community Crisis Stabilization Centers fund that goes to KDADs? And then if I want to see the programs receiving these funds, is that the budget I look at, or is this all, are the programs in statute? I'm trying to figure out how to do my research on this.
I believe that would be the case to go. I think that probably staff will, you know, be able to give you a good answer on where those monies go from those programs with KDADs. Certainly better than I could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can answer that real quick. So in 2021, there was $4 million transfer to KDADs, and it's set up 75-25. So 75% goes to the crisis intervention centers, and then the 25% goes to the clubhouse model. But it all does go to KDADs, and then they keep it up.
Further questions? Got a couple. As you well know, Director, there are two bills, one in the House, one in the Senate. And I understand and appreciate that you're always a neutral on either one of these bills. The casinos, of course, are not neutral, although they worked for you. You're the one who issued the contract to the casinos, but they are not barred by that. They can hire as many lobbyists as they like. My question is, if some form of sportsbook betting should pass, you will be the one that is responsible for the issuing the license to those facilities, others. Would that be correct?
Mr. Chairman, you'll forgive me. I couldn't quite hear your question.
Sorry.
I believe you're...
Okay. My question being, you know, the casinos actually work for the state of Kansas through you.
Correct.
Because only the state can own gaming facilities. All the casinos have a contract through the lottery system that you issue them through a contract. And although you must be neutral on all those issues as to sportsbook, the casinos are not barred by that, so they are allowed to hire lobbyists. The crux of my question is, if we come up with some form of sports book, you will be the one that would issue the license to those facilities, whoever they may be, to offer a sports book. Would that be correct?
Well, I think that the term license and contract sort of get thrown around in the expanded lottery mechanism a little bit differently. If you look at it as, you know, the state has to own and operate whatever sort of gaming, and this is just sort of statutorily and constitutionally, the state has to own and operate whatever form of gaming that the legislature decides to enact with regard to, excuse me, sports wagering or iLottery issues. And with that, the lottery would be responsible for seeing who or how the implementation of sports wagering were implemented with our casinos, should they be the ones that are required to implement a sports wagering program. If it involved our retailers, then we would have to involve that question as well. The question of who licenses those entities would probably fall to the Racing and Gaming Commission, because they're the ones who are responsible for background people that are involved with the casinos of a certain income. They do a certain value of income between the two entities. So we wouldn't necessarily be licensing them, but it would be KRGC that would be backgrounding and licensing them, but we would be responsible for probably contractual relationships between those parties. Yeah.
And how many do you have that are presently selling lottery tickets throughout the state of Kansas?
Retailers, we have about 1,700 retailers. Well, sorry, about 1,600 retailers right now. So between 1,600 and 1,700, depending on when we talk. About 1,700.
They cover the entire state of Kansas.
They do, yes.
Thank you. If the legislature, and of course with the executive branch's approval, should approve some type of sports book gaming, are we going to have this available for next year for the March Madness? Or what would it be?
Well, it depends on a number of different factors. I mean, obviously, I think that the expediency of that, the issue with sports wagering is, I think that there's this misnomer that it's going to be some sort of financial windfall for the state. It's really not. I mean, if you look at the way that sports wagering is designed, and if you look at the testimony that the casinos have given in the last year or 2 years, the margins on sports wagering are very low for revenue streams. The majority of monies that are involved in sports wagering go back to the player. And so there's a very small percentage that goes to the owner / operator of this sort of entity. So the way that, a number of the bills that have been proposed that I've seen this year, a great majority of that money obviously goes to the managers, our casino managers, and then a very small proportion goes to the state. So we're not talking about a great deal of money that's going to make it into the state coffers as a result of sports wagering, and people should know that. But how quickly it could be implemented, I think, depends on the way the state structures it. And if we end up with a system where the managers have the ability to have different platforms or skins through their programs, and the licensure of those, may take a while. Poor Racing and Gaming is going to have to license these folks. That's going to take a while. They're going to have to staff to license those people and to figure out a regulatory scheme for them. We're going to have contractual relationships. So I don't know. I mean, the longer that we go, I don't want to promise you that we're going to be up and running by X date, because I just don't know. But it could be a very, I just don't want to guess, frankly. I mean, I think that everybody wants to have it up and running as quickly as we can, but I would hate to overpromise and underdeliver. So.
Understand, and my understanding, I think was conversations with you, that it's like I was thinking 94 to 96% went back to the players, and there's only like a 4 or 6% margin profit.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's very correct. Yeah, and the state would then get a percentage of that. So the state would be getting essentially a percentage of 5%, whatever that number is. Yes.
And my understanding also is that on the casino aspect of it, on the slot machines, the state's revenue is 22%.
Correct. Well, and that's statutorily set, but again, the margins on, it's the 22% of the 100% of gaming revenue, which is different than 22% of 5% as an example, which 22% would be too high. Yeah. So yeah, they're apples and oranges, but yes, that is correct. It would be a percentage of that 5%. Correct, sir.
Based on my inquiry, further questions of the director? Oh, Representative Orenkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durrell, Kansas Lottery still works with Scientific Gaming, I think.
We do.
Correct?
Yes, sir. They are our central system provider for all of the terminals in all of the retail locations. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Scientific Gaming have a sports wagering platform.
They do. Yes, sir.
And if the Kansas Lottery were to work with Scientific Gaming on a sports wagering platform, then the state would probably get a much larger percentage than if gaming went through the casino.
I think
correct?
that, well, yeah, I mean, it depends again on the structure of how things are implemented. I mean, if it was the state's responsibility to be the only source of sports wagering or sports book in the state, then yes, obviously, then the percentage would be higher. I'm not advocating that, by the way. I'm just saying that yes, in fact, it would be higher. But yes, I mean that's the answer to your question. Is yes, the state's revenue stream would have to be higher because the percentages would be different. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge.
Thank you. Further questions of the director? Seeing none, thank you, Director, for coming to us today by WebEx.
Pleasure.
And we will probably see more of you as the year goes along. With that,
Absolutely. Need anything else, let us know.
Thank you, sir. Betty, that's all I have scheduled for today. I would tell you tomorrow, as I've announced last week, that we will be doing the two bills that the Attorney General introduced and we had hearings on. So if you have amendments, you may want to talk to the reviser. We will get it done within our period of time tomorrow. I will open bill introductions one more time. Bill introductions, both for committee and for the audience. Again, seeing no bill introductions are closed. I would like to have everybody in their seats by 9 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be working bills, so that means we need all the time that is allotted to us. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.